Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy.
So today we're going to discuss the rape and murder of a 16-year-old girl and the rape and attempted murder of her 14-year-old sister.
I thought you didn't like the children.
Well, if it was early 1900s, they'd be considered adults. They'd done be married off, cranking out children already. So
we're doing the 1900s?
Kinda. 1999. Anyway, so the win, like I said, 1999. The where is good old Virginia. The some bitch of the week is Paul Warner Powell. Paul was born April 13th, 1978 in Fairfax, Virginia.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Guess I just did, but do I need a pen and paper for this one? Are you going to introduce like 1,500 people again and their families?
No, I'm not. You should be able to follow along pretty good.
Okay, I'll trust your recommendation.
Robert Culver and his fiancée, Lorraine Reed, lived together in Manassas, Virginia, with Lorraine's two daughters, Stacy Lynn Reed and Christy Aaron Reed. Now, when I started this case, I didn't realize how close it was.
Near you?
Right? I thought Fairfax was close when I saw that's where he was born after I started researching this case. And then when I saw that the murders take place in Manassas.
And then you kept reading and you're like, well, fuck me, that's my neighbor.
And also where my husband grew up. Like, that's insane. And the time period, Jason would have been a year out of high school at this point. So I was busy showing him pictures of the girls like, hey, did you know them? I realize Manassas is a big area. However, there's only so many schools and the likelihood of them running in the same general crowd, it's more likely than someplace else. So the sumbitch, Paul, he had some serious issues. He was a self-proclaimed racist and white supremacist. Paul tried continuously to hook up with his friend, who was 16-year-old Stacy. Paul and Stacy knew each other for about 2 years, so she would have been 14 and Paul would have been 18, which I still think is weird. When I was 18, I wasn't trying to hang out with a 14-year-old.
Wait, she was older?
No, he was.
Well, that's why. Men mature slower. Boys, rather. Well.
So this racist 20-year-old man found out that the underage girl that he had a crush on had a boyfriend. And to make matters worse, in Paul's tiny little brain hole, the boy that Stacy rejected him for was a boy named Sean Wilkerson, who was black. Like I said, Paul, this racist little son bitch, was angry that he was rejected for this boy.
This piece of shit was upset.
Sure was. And Sean was also more age appropriate for her. So
could it also be she was rejecting him because he's a racist piece of shit?
It's entirely possible.
Like, turns out she ain't real attracted to that failure type. And is he out of school or is he in school? Because maybe quit fishing around the middle school pond.
Right. I think 14 is high school, though. Isn't that like 9th grade?
Potato. If he's not actively in high school, maybe he needs to consider that,
Yeah.
He needs to stay off the recess playground.
Well, I'm curious how they met because you figure, let's assume that he graduated when he was 18. How did he meet her? She would have been in like 8th grade.
Mm-hmm. So I remember hanging out with a boy that had graduated high school before me and went to a different school. I met him through a friend who, when she transferred to our school, she had dated him then. So it might be one of those situations.
It's possible.
Because he had graduated when we were freshmen.
Gotcha.
But he was the oldest of his clique, so that was like he still had friends that were in school.
Makes sense. Yeah, because Jason, when he graduated, he had friends that were a year younger than him.
Mm-hmm.
But Sean, so Stacy's boyfriend or the boy she's interested in or whatever, he recently moved away, but they stayed in contact. And Stacy was also a member of her high school's Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. So She was planning to attend a military ball, and Sean was going to be
You
her
could
date.
just say JROTC because for a second my brain hole got stumped of what the hell was that you just said.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that, but you done finished that for me. So she had a life path that she was going towards, and she was going to her military ball with Sean. Paul was very vocal about his disapproval of interracial relationships, especially since Stacy and Sean were together.
What year was this?
99.
Okay.
Right? So on January 29th, 1999, so we're fresh into 99, Paul shows up at Stacy's house. She was home early from school, like a little before 12, and he demanded that she break up with Sean. They argue. Stacy's like, Paul, you need to get to steppin'. My stepdad's going to be home and he's going to be here for lunch. You need to go. So I'm guessing because she was 16, she probably wasn't supposed to have people over when her parents weren't home.
More like a grown-ass man.
Right? And I think also she needed an excuse for him to go away because who wants somebody to show up at their door just to argue with them? She had exams that day. She wanted to be done, not sit there and argue with this racist piece of garbage.
Well, now we've solved the mystery of why he was hanging out with a 14-year-old. Clearly immature.
Clearly. And she's 16 at this point.
I was just saying.
Right. Well, Paul returns to Stacy's house a little before 1. I think he was like stalking the house to wait until the stepdad left. But this time when he returned, he brought a survival knife.
He was stalking the house?
Like sitting outside, watching the driveway, waiting for the stepdad's car to leave. So he knew that he left. Yes, stalking the house to know who was in it. He's not stalking her. He knows she's there. He's stalking.
This is a weird way to say it.
Whatever.
Stalking is like you're following somebody and like he stalked the house.
Fine. Instead of stalking the house, he was staking it out. But he really wasn't because he was like driving by and giving it a gander over his shoulder and then taking off. And
stalking makes it seem like somebody's milling about.
Potato.
Following them. And if he's stalking the house and it's not moving, it seems more like he's casing the joint.
Whatever. You get the general gist. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. Because if you think about it, if he's crazy, maybe he thought the house was moving. Like, you know, that one feller that thought his head plate things were moving and he'd watch it in the mirror. He could be stalking a house and thinking it's running around.
Well, this guy wasn't
where
crazy.
He left it. Is he?
He wasn't crazy.
Is he?
No, he's just racist.
Is he?
He's dead, so.
Was he?
Not at that point. Shut up. Anyway, when Paul returns after stepdad Robert leaves, he brings a survival knife, a butterfly knife, a box cutter, and a 9mm pistol.
That seems excessive. You've only got 2 hands.
Maybe he's got some slippery fingers.
Or he's MacGyver, and he opens his trench coat, one of a knife, instead of a watch.
Wouldn't it be... I wouldn't think of him more of a MacGyver, more of like a...
maybe he was going to break and enter.
What's the guy's name? The cartoon? He's got like...
Inspector Gadget?
Yes. That's what I picture with the trench coat, where he opens it and has all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
anyway.
I suppose it wasn't a good reference anyways, because neither one of them open their trench coat and ask if you want to buy a watch or a knife.
And nor do they open their trench coats and say, I'm going to rape you, and you can make it difficult or easy.
Don't know. How about if you Google it, you can find an Inspector Gadget that does that.
Okay, anyway. So back to Paul and Stacy. He shows back up at her house with all these weapons. He attempts to rape Stacy. She was able to fight him off. Paul was furious and stabbed Stacy in the chest. After Paul killed his friend for not breaking up with her boyfriend and not letting him rape her, he goes down to the kitchen and pours himself a glass of iced tea and had himself a cigarette.
What the fuck? I thought you were going to say he made himself a snack.
No, he had a cigarette. He could have had a snack. I don't know. They mentioned the iced tea and the cigarette. Keep in mind, that was a little before 1, like 12:45, that he shows back up. And I'm assuming they only bickered and this probably happened fairly quickly. Paul decided to wait around for Stacy's 14-year-old sister, Christy, who was expected to come home from school around 3.
Mm.
So he literally just chilled in the house, waiting for her little sister to come home. And sure enough, Paul grabs Christy and forces her down to the basement where he does, in fact, rape her. And while raping her, or after he finished, Paul hears someone at the front door. So he ties her up with her shoelaces, runs upstairs. While Paul is gone checking the front door, Christy tried to escape. She managed to untie her hands, but unfortunately, Paul returned down to the basement. This racist piece of shit removed Christy's glasses and then began to choke her with her shoelace. He strangled the 14-year-old until she was unconscious. Then he proceeded to mutilate her body. He didn't kill her by strangling her. She was unconscious. And then he stabbed her in the chest. The knife stopped within a centimeter of her aorta. He stabbed her in the stomach a few times, sliced her wrists, and also repeatedly sliced her neck.
What the fuck? Does she live?
Yeah, just going to ignore you. Paul then returns to the kitchen for more iced tea, and he leaves with the glass because he decided to go to his friend's house, scoop him up, and they're going to go head to D.C. to buy some cocaine. Christy
He's a
comes
winner.
to. He sure is. Christy, the 14-year-old, comes to around 4:10, and around 4:15, her stepfather, Robert, came home. She tried to call out to him, but Robert found Stacy's room trashed, the older sister. So he walked into Christy's room, clicked on the light, and found Stacy's bloody corpse. He ran to find the phone, which was down in the basement, and I'm guessing the house phone was down in the basement because they have 2 teenage girls in the house and they probably like to yap. But he ran down to the basement, or he heard noises from Christy. I'm not sure which. He goes down there and he finds Christy bleeding out in the basement. He called 911 and started administering first aid. And although Christy was experiencing life-threatening injuries, she was able to tell the police officers and the paramedics that it was Paul Powell who attacked her. Now, to answer your question, Christy does survive this horrific attack, but Stacy was not as fortunate. Now, for Christy, it took 61 stitches to close her neck. And if you look, I sent you a picture. I texted it to you. You can see all the slices on her throat.
I can't even imagine coming to and being in that state.
Me either. Do you see all those scars on her neck? That's awful. And that's years later.
Ugh.
It was ultimately determined that the wounds to her throat and abdomen each came within 1 centimeter of severing a major artery, which likely would have caused her death. So she's very, very lucky. And I am pleased to say that she does testify against this sorry sack of dog do. Paul was arrested for the rape and attempted murder of Christy. He was also arrested for the attempted rape and the murder of Stacy. During one interview with with Prince William County Police, Paul said that Stacy was dead because, quote, she was stupid. I do not like this man. Like, for so many reasons, but you just murdered this girl, and now you're telling the officers she's dead because she's stupid? Seriously?
Yeah.
But then Paul told the police officers that he and Stacy had an argument because she had a black boyfriend and that he didn't agree with interracial dating. Paul claimed that during the argument, Stacy attacked him and scratched his face, and then he pushed her to the floor. He said that when Stacy attacked him again, she got stuck on his knife, and he also originally denied raping Christy, the 14-year-old. When he denied raping Christy, I think he thought she was going to die.
Yeah.
I think
just like we've seen so many times before when somebody strangles somebody and they think they're dead, but they're just passed out.
Yeah.
I do feel like partially because TV will make you think that you can kill people a lot faster than you can. And to strangle someone takes such a long amount of time that you just don't realize when they go limp that you're not actually dead.
Yeah.
Although I'm just surprised she didn't wake up to all the stabbing.
Yeah. I was shocked on that one. You would have thought that would have brought her to, but I guess she was severely depleted of her oxygen.
Yeah, because I've heard, that is, obviously I haven't put any of this into action, is that just like you can experience so much pain you pass out, you can also be roused out of that state with extreme pain.
Yeah, I have heard that. An autopsy determined that Stacy died from the knife wound to her heart. Now, keep in mind, Paul was saying that he accidentally stabbed her in the chest, which I don't know how that's even possible unless he's super
Mhm.
tall and she was super short. But that means he was pointing it at her. So, whatever. He's an idiot. But the medical examiner testified that there was a single entrance wound, but two exit wounds, indicating that the knife had been withdrawn partially and then reinserted into the heart. The wound path pierced the left ventricle, and then the other went through both the left and right ventricles, exiting the heart at the back of the right ventricle. So, like, he didn't even pull it all the way out. He was just like, I know you can't see me, but I'm doing like a jabbing motion. But Stacy's body also exhibited a number of bruises on her head, her chest, her abdomen, her back, her arms, her legs, and cuts on her face. A stab wound to her back and cuts and scrapes down the left forearm of her body. The autopsy further revealed that Stacy had been struck on the head with significant force to cause bleeding inside her scalp and to the membranes around her brain prior to her death. So he beat the crap out of her. So she didn't just fall down and then stick herself with his knife.
I think it's
So
also crazy the amount of times we've come across those too. Of like, she fell on it several times.
she did it to herself. Paul was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death, but the verdict was thrown out on appeal by the Virginia Supreme Court. Paul instead was given 3 life sentences. Now, what made me choose this case is what I'm about to tell you. Everything else was
Does his
just
penis fall off in jail?
no. So this dumbass Paul thought that he beat the system with 3 life sentences. Like, he thought he no longer, yeah, he thought he beat the system because he no longer faced execution and they gave him 3 life sentences. No possibility of parole, just his ass was locked up forever. He thought he won. So he thought that he could no longer be executed, period, due to double jeopardy laws. This feller ain't too smart. By the way, double jeopardy, for those that don't know, is you can't be tried for the same crime twice. Now, if you go out and repeat the same crime, you can be
Yeah, it's another crime.
retried. Right. But the exact same crime without new evidence or anything like that, it would be the exact same crime. So Paul thinks that he's amazing and decides to write a 4-page letter laced with profanity to the prosecutor. In this magnificent letter, Paul admitted that he attempted to rape Stacy and then bragged in detail about how things went down in the home. And as if that weren't enough for this asswipe, he then decided to write more letters, either taunting or threatening the victim's family.
2 things: must have been long-winded as hell discussing all of his things. And 2, I don't think I've heard anybody called an asswipe since high school.
It's literally here in my notes. I feel like it was warranted in this case. Mainly, aside from the fact that he thought he was hot shit and wrote a letter to the prosecutors, but he does write letters, and I do have copies of the stuff that he wrote, and we can post those on our Facebook page. But, like, one of the things that he wrote, he sent a letter to the girl's mom. Her name's Lorraine, if you don't remember that. And he said it was like, I guess, a half-naked girl that he got out of a magazine or something that looks similar to Stacy. And he sent her the letter saying, doesn't this look like somebody that we both know or used to know? Implying the daughter that he had murdered. Like, he was going out of his way to mess with these people. And he was sending letters threatening to kill Christy, the girl that the younger sister who survived. And he's just a piece of garbage. So in his letter to the prosecutor, part of it, because I'm not going to read the whole thing, he said, since I've already been indicted on first-degree murder and the VA Supreme Court said that I can't be charged with capital murder again, which is not what they said, I figured I would tell y'all the rest of what happened on January 29th, 1999 to show you how stupid all of y'all are. He detailed how he told Stacy she could do it the easy way or the hard way, and how she continued to resist him. He then stabbed her and stomped on her neck until she stopped breathing. He then goes on to say, I guess I forgot to mention these events when I was being questioned. Ha ha. Do you just hate yourself for being so stupid and for fucking up and saving me? Fun fact, for this idiot, double jeopardy didn't apply and doesn't apply for anyone in this situation, because just because he was acquitted and his death sentence was overturned, it was because the Virginia Supreme Court felt there wasn't enough evidence to convict him of the capital murder. However, with new evidence, you can be retried for the same crime, and his letter was used against him. Prosecutors indicted Paul again for the attempted rape and murder of Stacy Reed, using his own letters to the prosecutors as evidence. And once again, he's convicted and he was sentenced to death. He's so stupid. Paul chose to be executed by electric chair instead of lethal injection. I didn't know they got a choice.
I think when they were phasing one out and bringing in the other, because there was the other one that, what's her face? That Krista Pike.
Oh, yeah.
That she would have gotten the electric chair. Not that she'll get killed at all, but it was the electric chair or lethal injection was just being introduced. But as we've seen, that every year it's whether or not everybody agrees or disagrees with the death penalty and whether it goes on a ballot.
Well, Paul chose the electric chair, which blows my mind. Get it? I'm pleased to say he was executed by the electric chair on March 18th, 2010.
Which, out of all the ways to die, I wouldn't want to be the electric chair. I wouldn't volunteer for that one.
No, I wouldn't either. That seems extremely painful.
Mm-hmm. And what if, there's a power shortage? You got to do that a second time?
So Lorraine,
it'd be like a twice baked potato.
Ew! Way to ruin twice baked baked potatoes. Lorraine Huberry, the girl's mother, attended the execution, and just for informational purposes, Paul Powell was the second to last person to die in Virginia's electric chair. He was the 106th Virginia inmate executed since the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated capital punishment in 1976. Only beating Texas only beats Virginia. Otherwise, Virginia's executed the most. Texas has executed 451 people since 1976. So that's a huge difference in numbers.
I'm not shocked by these numbers anymore compared to China's 8,000.
Right? But I was a little surprised that Texas is leading with executions here, if it's a race, with 451. And Virginia's in second.
Why would you be surprised?
Well, and Virginia's in second.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
They put up with way less, which makes sense now. I kind of get it. So, but that is my case on Paul Powell, that stupid son bitch. And I'm glad that he wrote the letter to the prosecutor. I really feel sorry for everyone else that he tormented with his letters, but I'm glad that he was executed.
Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.